Hi Trinity kiddos, welcome to Bible Stories with Bekah on this Good Friday. I have 3 stories for you today out of the Spark Story Bible. At the end of each story, I'm going to ask you a question to think about. You can talk about it with your siblings or your mom and dad, just to help you process the story a little bit. So let's get started again in our Spark Story Bible. You can open up to page 468. And the first story we're going to read is called Jesus is Betrayed. Jesus had a good friend named Peter who was there when Jesus healed people and made miracles happen. Jesus liked Peter so much he gave Peter the nickname the Rock. Jesus had another friend named Judas. Jesus, Peter, Judas, and the other disciples spent lots of time together. They were all together when Jesus told them that his life had to end. It was a sad and hard time for Jesus and his friends. Jesus felt so sad that he went to a quiet place in a garden and prayed. "Please, God," Jesus prayed, "make me strong. Help me trust you." Jesus asked the disciples to come to the garden and stay awake while he prayed, but they fell asleep. "Wake up, wake up, wake up," Jesus told the disciples 3 times. When Jesus finished praying, it was time for them to go and face hard things. Even though Jesus had many friends, he had some bad enemies too. Some people were scared that Jesus would change the world too much with love. Judas got scared too. He let Jesus down. Judas told some of Jesus' enemies where Jesus was. When soldiers came to the garden, Judas kissed Jesus on the cheek to show them who they were looking for. The soldiers took Jesus away. Judas and Peter ran away and hid. They were so scared. Later, Peter waited outside the place where Jesus was on trial. A girl saw Peter and said, "He's a friend of Jesus. He's in trouble too." Peter wanted to help his friend Jesus, but he was scared, so he pretended he didn't know Jesus. "I don't know him. I don't know him. I don't know him," Peter said. His lie made him feel even worse inside. Peter ran away again. He cried and cried. Peter felt so sad for Jesus. Peter felt very, very sorry. But Jesus knew that Peter loved him. Jesus knew that Peter was his friend. That's why he had given Peter such a special job. The Rock became a strong leader in the church. He told many, many people about his best friend Jesus. "I know him, I know him, I know him," Peter told everyone. And that was the truth. So, after this story, I want you to pause the video and discuss with your siblings or your parents about if you've ever had a friend that let you down like Peter and Judas let Jesus down. What happened and how did that make you feel? Take some time to talk about that with your family. And now we'll move on to the next story, which is called Christ the King. And it's on page 474 of your Spark Story Bible. The priests were mad at Jesus and wanted to get rid of him. "What will happen to us if the people follow Jesus?" they grumbled. So they made a plan. "Let's take Jesus to the governor, Pontius Pilate. He can get rid of Jesus." When Pontius Pilate saw Jesus, he asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus didn't answer. Pilate thought kings ruled over countries and people. Jesus knew that his power was about loving God. Jesus' kingdom was not the same. Pilate was frustrated. Some people wanted to kill Jesus, but Pilate didn't think Jesus had done anything wrong. Pilate didn't want any trouble, so he handed Jesus over to the people. The priests smiled. Soon Jesus would be gone. Jesus knew that he would die, but that wouldn't be the end of the story. Jesus knew God's plan too. So the question for this story is, how do you think Jesus felt in this story? Did he feel good about what was happening? It says at the end there that Jesus knew God's plan. So did he feel comforted or was he scared? Talk about that with your family for a little bit. And then our last story for this Good Friday is called The Day Jesus Died. It was a very sad day when Jesus died. The soldiers who had arrested Jesus teased him for pretending to be a king. They took his clothes and put a king's purple cloak on him. They made a crown of vines with sharp thorns and put it on Jesus' head. Ouch! The soldiers made Jesus carry a heavy wooden cross. The cross was too heavy for him. Jesus fell and skinned his knees, and the cross tumbled to the ground. A man in the crowd carried the cross the rest of the way. The soldiers nailed Jesus' hands and feet to the cross. They raised Jesus' cross up on a hill between two other men. The other men were thieves, and they were being crucified too. One of the men was angry with Jesus. "If you are a powerful king, can't you save yourself? Why don't you save us too?" The man spat at Jesus. But the other thief believed in Jesus. He shouted back, "Don't you know who this is? This is God's son. He hasn't done anything wrong. We are being punished for our mistakes, but Jesus shouldn't be here." The man turned to Jesus and asked, "Will you take me to heaven with you?" Jesus looked at the man and loved him. Jesus told him, "Yes, today we will be in heaven together." After a while, the world grew very dark, as if a terrible thunderstorm was coming. It was as if all of creation was crying because Jesus was about to die. Jesus was feeling all alone and prayed to see if God was still there. Of course, God never left Jesus. God was with him the whole time. Jesus looked at the crowd. He was so sad that people didn't believe that he was God's son. He asked God to forgive them for killing him. The soldiers offered him some sour wine, but he didn't want to drink it. He was ready to die. Finally, Jesus had fought for long enough. He said, "God, the work you gave me to do here is finished." He breathed a final, long, slow breath, and then he died. So that was a very sad story. And I know that it can be kind of difficult to talk about death and dying. But the question I have for you to talk about with your siblings or your parents is, even though it's a sad day, why do we call it Good Friday? Maybe your parents have some ideas about that. Thank you for listening to these stories, and we will be back on Easter. Bye, everyone.